Hello everyone, my name is Jamie Turner and I'll be presenting Case Study 6, Dealing with Disparate Impact in Family Policy. Now just an overview of the case study. The President recently signed two bills under the Quality Daycare Act into law. The first bill dealt with increasing the income tax credit a qualified working parent receives. The second bill imposes tighter regulatory standards for registered child care facilities and for child care providers. The third bill, which is the main focus of the case study, is the tax voucher program that will go towards the expenses of taking a child to a registered child care facility. And the issue there is who can qualify, what family or what type of parent can qualify for the tax voucher, and the families and parents that don't. Identifying the issue. Dealing with disparate impact in family policy. In order to identify the issue, you first have to define what disparate impact is. Disparate impact, according to the case study, is the legal term for a law or policy that helps or hurts members of particular groups, even though it may not be discriminatory on its face. What this is saying is, even though this third bill, its intent isn't to discriminate, it inadvertently does. And what happens here is parents or families that can't afford to send their children to qualified or accredited daycare facilities or daycare providers don't qualify for the voucher program. They don't qualify to receive the tax vouchers to provide daycare for their children. So the issue here is, how do we go about including them in this third bill? The table in the case study, table 7.2, differing patterns of daycare utilization estimated by selected racial or ethnic groups, breaks down just who is disqualified under the voucher program because of the way, just because of what they can afford to do as far as child care services. So according to this table, 6 out of the 60% of African Americans that utilize daycare, only 7% utilize accredited daycare centers, while 53% utilize home-based care or babysitting. Out of the 58% of Latinos that utilize daycare centers, only 5% use accredited centers, while 53% utilize home-based care or babysitting. And so the issue is, how do we not let disparate impact affect these groups of people, or how do we broaden the bill in order to incorporate them into the voucher program? And that concludes identifying the issue. Identifying the stakeholders. So in this case study, there are several groups of people, some who are for the bill as it is written now, where only certain families or certain parents, the qualified families, the qualified parents, they'd be the only ones eligible for the tax voucher. And there are groups that are against the bill as it's written now and would like to see more parents and more families included in the voucher program. So for the groups that are currently for the bill as it's written, that limits the bill to qualified parents and qualified families, are lobbyists and citizens seeking to cut federal spending, and also a loosely organized lobby of child care professionals. The stakeholders that are against the current bill, against the bill the way it's written now, where only people identified as qualified parents or qualified families that can utilize the voucher program, are the African American Civil Rights Leadership, the National Council of La Raza, and the National Organization for Women. These stakeholders would like to see the scope of the bill broadened in order uh, in order to impact or in order to benefit more people who the current bill currently doesn't provide for. Identifying stakeholder perspectives. Previously discussed, we identified several stakeholders, some who are for Bill 3, the way it's currently written, that limits those who would qualify for the voucher program, and stakeholders who are against the currently written bill and want to see the scope of the bill increase to include more families. Starting with the loosely organized lobby of child care professionals, this group just wants the government to keep the bill as it is because by broadening the scope of the bill, they feel that the government would be undermining the Quality Daycare Act. As you remember, Bill 2 of the Quality Daycare Act imposes tighter regulations on accredited and registered child care facilities. And this lobby of child care professionals, they would argue that if the government were to include unregistered and unaccredited child care facilities, this would undermine the impact of the Quality Daycare Act. Also for the bill are the lobbyists and citizens seeking to cut federal spending. Their perspective is they simply just want to limit government spending, and by limiting who qualifies for the child care voucher, because the child care vouchers are funded by the government, by limiting who qualifies for the voucher, they would be cutting government spending. So this group of lobbyists and citizens aren't necessarily against unregistered child care providers. They're just against government spending and would like the government to cut spending any way that it can, and don't want this bill to be opened up to increase who qualifies under the voucher program. The perspective of the African American Civil Rights Leadership, the National Council of La Raza, and the National Organization for Women, they all share similar perspectives, if not the same perspectives, which is they understand that the bill doesn't discriminate against African American and Latino families, but it doesn't benefit them either. And the reason they are against the bill is there are several families who can't afford to send their families or send their children to registered and accredited child care facilities or child care service providers, and won't be able to qualify for the vouchers as the bill is written now. These groups understand that there are several families and several parents that, for the fact that they can't afford to use accredited institutions for child care services, they have to rely on home-based child care services, which may be a neighbor or a friend, and that's the only way that they're able to provide or receive child care services and maintain a job. So those are the perspectives of the stakeholders involved. And finally, make a recommendation. My recommendation would be to broaden the scope of the third bill in the Quality Daycare Act to allow families who utilize unregistered home-based childcare to be eligible to use the voucher. My reasoning behind this is supported in the case study. Congressman Stuart Helfand on page 291 cited that the tax credit would allow working mothers to become wage earners. The wage taxes on these employees would in turn offset the treasury losses on the child care deduction. On a macro level, this would do more good than harm as far as budgetary concerns are involved. And this concludes Case Study 6.